She had 48 hours to decide, marry a man she'd never met, or watch her family lose everything they'd ever worked for. But what Amara didn't know was that the cold-eyed Korean billionaire standing before her was hiding a secret so dangerous, it could get them both killed. And by the time she discovered the truth, it was already too late to walk away. If you want to know how an ordinary Nigerian nursing student became the most protected woman in Seoul's underworld, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this story will take you on a journey you won't believe. And if you make it to the end, drop a comment telling me if you would have made the same choice Amara did. Now, let's begin. 3 months ago, Amara Okafor was living her dream in Lagos. At 24 years old, she was in her final year of nursing school, working night shifts at a local clinic to pay her tuition. Her father, Chief Okafor, ran a modest import business and her mother sold fabrics at Balagan Market. They weren't rich, but they were happy. Life was simple, predictable, comfortable. Amara would wake up at 5 in the morning, study for 2 hours while drinking her mother's strong Nigerian tea, attend classes until 3 in the afternoon, then head to the clinic for her evening shift. On Sundays, the family went to church together at the big cathedral downtown, and afterward her mother would cook her favorite egusi soup with pounded yam. It was the kind of life where you knew what tomorrow would bring, where you could plan for the future with confidence. Until you couldn't. Amara had dreams. Big dreams. She wanted to become a nurse practitioner, maybe even open her own clinic someday in one of Lagos's underserved neighborhoods. She'd seen too many people suffer because they couldn't afford proper medical care, and she wanted to change that. Her professors said she had the skills, the dedication, the heart for it. She was on track to graduate at the top of her class. Everything was going exactly according to plan. And then, on a rainy Tuesday night in October, everything fell apart. The rain was coming down hard that night, turning the red dirt roads around their compound into rivers of mud. Amara was in her room studying for an anatomy exam when she heard the knock at the door. It was late, almost 10 o'clock, and they weren't expecting visitors. She heard her father answer the door, heard unfamiliar voices speaking, and something in the tone made her stop studying and listen. The voices moved to the living room. Amara crept to her doorway and peered out. 3 men in black suits stood in their modest living room, looking completely out of place. Their suits were expensive, the kind you saw on businessmen in Victoria Island, not in their middle-class neighborhood. They were perfectly pressed despite the rain, and the men wore them with the kind of confidence that came from money and power. The lead man was tall, Korean, probably in his 50s, with silver streaks in his black hair and eyes that reminded Amara of a snake. Cold. Calculating. Emotionless. He carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than her father's car. Her father looked small standing in front of them, his shoulders hunched, his hands shaking slightly as he gestured for them to sit. Her mother hovered in the doorway to the kitchen, a dish towel twisted in her hands, her face pale with worry. Amara's younger brother was at a friend's house for the night, thank God. At least he wouldn't have to see this. Whatever this was. The men sat. Her father sat. And then the Korean man opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. Amara couldn't hear everything they were saying, but she caught enough. Debt. Payment. Contract. Deadline. Her father's voice was pleading, apologetic, desperate. The Korean man's voice never changed. It stayed calm, polite, businesslike, which somehow made it more terrifying. Amara's mind raced. She knew her father had borrowed money to expand his business. He'd told the family about it 2 years ago, had been so excited about the opportunity. A Korean investment firm had offered him $500,000 at what seemed like a reasonable interest rate. He'd used the money to import electronics from China, sell them across West Africa, expand his operations. For a while, business had been good. Really good. He'd hired 6 new employees. He'd bought her mother that small shop in the market she'd always wanted. He'd even started saving for Amara's brother's university education. They'd felt, for the first time in their lives, financially secure. But then the economy had shifted. The naira had devalued. Import costs had skyrocketed. Sales had slowed. Her father had still been making his monthly payments, but just barely. Amara had noticed him looking stressed lately, spending long hours going over his books, making phone calls in hushed tones. She'd asked if everything was okay, and he'd smiled and said yes, not to worry, it was just business pressures. Normal stuff. She'd believed him because she'd wanted to believe him. Now, watching these men in their living room, Amara realized how bad things really were. Your father has two options, the Korean man said, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet house. His English was perfect, with barely a trace of an accent. Pay us $2 million by Friday, or we take everything. Your home, your business, your mother's shop. Everything. Amara felt her stomach drop. $2 million. That was impossible. Her family didn't have that kind of money. No one they knew had that kind of money. Her mother made a small, choked sound. Her father's hands were shaking badly now as he held the documents. But I've been making my payments, he said, his voice breaking. I've never missed a payment. The Korean man nodded slowly. That's true, Chief Okafor. You've been very diligent. But I'm afraid you didn't read the fine print in your contract. There was a clause written in Korean that outlined the terms of what would happen if certain economic conditions were met. Those conditions have been met. Your debt has accelerated. The full amount is now due. That's not fair, Amara's father said, standing up suddenly. You never explained that clause. You never told me. The Korean man's expression didn't change. The contract was provided to you in both English and Korean. You signed both versions. You agreed to all terms. Fair or not, this is the situation we find ourselves in. $2 million by Friday, or we begin foreclosure proceedings. We will take possession of your business, your home, all your assets. We have the legal right to do so. Amara watched her father sink back into his chair, watched all the fight go out of him in an instant. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Her mother was crying quietly now, one hand pressed over her mouth to muffle the sound. Amara felt tears burning in her own eyes. Their home. Her father had built that business from nothing, had worked 14-hour days for 20 years to make it successful. Her mother's shop was her pride and joy, the first thing she'd ever owned in her own name. And now these men were going to take it all. But then the Korean man did something strange. He reached back into his briefcase and pulled out a photograph. He slid it across the coffee table toward Amara's father. There is, however, a third option, he said quietly. Amara couldn't see the photograph from where she stood, but she saw her father's face change as he looked at it. Confusion first, then shock, then something that might have been horror. What are you saying? Her father asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Korean man leaned back in his chair, completely at ease, like he was discussing the weather and not tearing a family apart. The man in that photograph is Min-jun Park. He is the son of the man your father owes. He is 28 years old, well-educated, and runs his family's operations in Seoul. He is, how shall I put this, particular about what he wants. He has requested an African bride. Someone educated, intelligent, beautiful, from a respectable family. Someone who can represent him well in social situations. Your daughter Amara fits that description perfectly. Amara's heart stopped. For a moment, she thought she'd misheard. But then her mother gasped, a sharp, wounded sound, and her father said what in a voice filled with disbelief and rage, and Amara knew she'd heard correctly. They were talking about her. They wanted her. This wasn't about business anymore. This was about her life. She stepped out of her room before she could think better of it. All eyes turned to her. The Korean men looked at her with cold appraisal, like she was livestock being evaluated. Her father looked stricken. Her mother looked terrified. Amara walked into the living room on shaking legs and stared at the Korean man. Say that again, she demanded. What do you want from me? The man didn't seem surprised to see her. In fact, he looked pleased, like he'd expected her to be listening. Miss Okafor, he said smoothly. A pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard excellent things about you. Top of your nursing class, I understand. Very impressive. He gestured to the empty chair beside her father. Please sit. We should discuss this like adults. I'm not sitting, Amara said. Tell me what you want. Very well, the man said. He picked up the photograph from the table and held it out to her. This is Min-jun Park. He is the son of Chairman Park Jae-sung, the man who owns the investment firm your father borrowed from, and many other businesses besides. The Parks are a very powerful family in South Korea. Very wealthy. Very influential. Min-jun is being groomed to take over the family empire. Amara took the photograph with trembling fingers. The man in the picture was young, probably late 20s like the man had said. He was Korean, devastatingly handsome in a cold, sharp way. He had strong features, a squared jaw, high cheekbones, and dark eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. He was wearing an expensive black suit and standing in front of what looked like a glass skyscraper at night, the Seoul skyline glittering behind him. He looked powerful, dangerous, completely unapproachable. Even in a photograph, he radiated an energy that made Amara's skin crawl. Min-jun needs a wife, the Korean man continued. In our culture, a man of his age and position is expected to be married. It shows stability, responsibility, readiness to lead. But Min-jun has been, shall we say, resistant to traditional arrangements. He doesn't want to marry someone from one of the other prominent families. He wants someone different. Someone unexpected. Someone from outside his world. Someone who can't be connected to the politics and power struggles that consume our society. He specifically requested an African bride. And when my associates and I were considering your father's situation, we realized this could be a mutually beneficial arrangement. Amara's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the photograph. You want me to marry him, she said. A complete stranger. In a foreign country. The man nodded. Yes. If you agree to marry Min-jun and remain married for 1 year, your family's debt will be cleared. All $2 million forgiven immediately. You will be well provided for during your time in Seoul. You'll live in a luxury penthouse, have access to anything you need, want for nothing. And at the end of 1 year, you will receive $100,000 and be free to leave or stay as you choose. Your family's future will be secure. Your father's business will be saved. Your mother's shop will remain hers. And if I refuse, Amara asked, her voice shaking. The man's expression didn't change. Then we'll see you on Friday to begin foreclosure proceedings. And I should mention, Miss Okafor, that if your family attempts to flee, hide assets, or otherwise avoid payment, things will become very unpleasant. My employers have extensive resources. They will find you. And the consequences will be severe. This is your family's best option. Truly, their only viable option. He stood up, smoothing his already perfect suit. You have until tomorrow night to decide. Here is my card. When you've made your decision, call the number. Arrangements will be made immediately. He placed a business card on the table, and then he and his associates left, walking out into the rain without looking back. The door closed behind them, and for a long moment, no one moved. Then her mother let out a sob, a terrible, broken sound, and buried her face in her hands. Her father sat frozen, staring at the business card like it was a bomb. And Amara stood there holding the photograph of Min-jun Park, feeling like her entire world had just collapsed. She didn't sleep that night. How could she? She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her parents arguing in hushed, desperate voices in the next room. Her mother was crying. Her father kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't know over and over like a mantra that might somehow fix everything. But nothing was going to fix this. Nothing except Amara agreeing to marry a stranger and moving halfway across the world. Around 2 a.m, she pulled out her phone and started searching for information about Min-jun Park. There was almost nothing. A few blurry photos at business events where he stood in the background, always off to the side, never the center of attention. No smile in any of them. No warmth. Just that cold, watchful expression. No social media accounts that she could find. No interviews. No personal information whatsoever. It was like he was a ghost who occasionally appeared in other people's photographs. She searched for information about the Park family and found slightly more. Chairman Park Jae-sung was mentioned in several Korean business articles. His company, Park Enterprises, had holdings in real estate, technology, import-export, and a dozen other industries. They were worth billions. The articles described Chairman Park as a shrewd businessman, a formidable negotiator, someone you didn't want to cross. There were hints at connections to organized crime, but nothing concrete. Nothing proven. Just whispers and speculation. Amara spent hours reading about South Korea. Seoul looked like something from a science fiction movie, all neon lights and towering skyscrapers and crowds of fashionable people. The culture seemed incredibly different from Nigeria. More formal, more hierarchical, more reserved. They ate different food, spoke a language that looked impossible to learn with its complex characters, followed social rules she didn't understand. How was she supposed to survive there? She'd never left Nigeria before. The farthest she'd ever traveled was to Abuja for a nursing conference. And now she was supposed to move to South Korea and marry a man she'd never met. This is insane, she whispered to herself in the darkness. This can't be happening. But it was happening. And somewhere in the depths of the night, Amara made her decision. She couldn't let her family lose everything. She couldn't watch her father's business disappear, her mother's dreams crumble, their home get taken away. Not when she had the power to stop it. It was only 1 year. 12 months. She could survive 12 months of anything. Couldn't she? At dawn, her mother came into her room. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She sat on the edge of Amara's bed and took her hand. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "We'll find another way." But they both knew there was no other way. Amara had spent hours thinking about it, turning over every possibility in her mind. Her father had already tried to borrow money from banks, from friends, from family. No one had that kind of money. No one could help. This was their only option. "Mama," Amara said, squeezing her mother's hand. "It's only 1 year. 12 months. I can do 12 months. And then I'll come home with money for university, for the future. It'll be okay." But even as she said the words, she didn't believe them. How could anything be okay after this? Her mother pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her like she was afraid to let go. "You are the bravest person I know," her mother sobbed into her hair. "The bravest and the best. And I am so sorry this is happening to you." 2 days later, Amara called the number on the business card. The voice that answered was female, efficient, emotionless. A secretary or assistant, probably. "Good morning, Miss Okafor," the woman said in perfect English. "We've been expecting your call. Have you made your decision?" "Yes," Amara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll do it. I'll marry him." "Excellent," the woman said, and Amara could hear the sound of typing in the background. "We will send a courier with documents for you to sign. The wedding will take place next week via proxy ceremony. You'll sign the marriage documents here, and Mr. Park will sign in Seoul. Legally binding in both countries. You will fly to Seoul the following day. Pack lightly. Everything you need will be provided. A wardrobe, toiletries, electronics. Mr. Park wants you to be comfortable." "What's he like?" Amara asked before she could stop herself. The woman paused. "Mr. Park is a very private person, Miss Okafor. I'm sure you'll get to know him when you arrive. Is there anything else?" "No," Amara said quietly. "Thank you." The line went dead. The next week passed in a nightmarish blur. A courier arrived with a stack of legal documents written in English, Korean, and what looked like several other languages. Amara read them carefully, looking for loopholes or hidden clauses like the one that had trapped her father. But the contract seemed straightforward. She would marry Min-jun Park. She would live with him in Seoul for 1 year. At the end of that year, she would receive $100,000 and be free to divorce him or remain married as she chose. Her family's debt would be cleared immediately upon her signing. She signed. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold the pen, but she signed. And just like that, she was married to a man she'd never met, never spoken to, never even seen in person. Mrs. Park, she thought numbly. Amara Park. It sounded wrong. It felt wrong. But it was done. She had to tell people she was leaving. That was almost as hard as signing the documents. She told her friends from nursing school that she was taking a semester off for a family emergency. They were concerned, offered help, but she smiled and said everything was fine. Just something she needed to take care of. She'd be back soon. The lies tasted like ash in her mouth. She said goodbye to her professors, her classmates, her coworkers at the clinic. Everyone wished her well. Everyone asked when she'd be back. Soon, she told them. Just a few months. More lies. Her younger brother, Chidi, who was 16, cried when she told him she was leaving. He couldn't understand why, because their parents had decided not to tell him the truth. They said Amara had gotten a scholarship opportunity abroad, a chance to study nursing in South Korea. Chidi was happy for her but sad she'd be gone. "Promise you'll call," he said, hugging her tight. "Promise you'll come back." "I promise," Amara said, and that, at least, was true. The night before she left, her family threw a small dinner. It felt like a funeral. Her aunts and uncles came, her cousins, her grandmother. They brought food, filled the house with noise and laughter and celebration. But Amara could barely eat. Her stomach was twisted in knots. Every time someone congratulated her on her opportunity, she wanted to scream the truth. That she wasn't going to study. That she'd been sold to pay a debt. That she was terrified. But she smiled and nodded and accepted their well wishes like the good daughter she'd always been. Her father pulled her aside before bed. They stood in the small garden behind the house under the stars, and for a long moment he didn't speak. Then, quietly, he said, "I failed you. I'm so sorry, Amara. I failed you as a father." "No, Papa," Amara said, taking his hands. "You didn't fail me. You were trying to help our family. You couldn't have known." But he shook his head. "I should have read every word of that contract. I should have been more careful. And now you're paying the price for my mistake. I'll never forgive myself for this. Never." Amara hugged him tight. "I'll be okay, Papa. It's only 1 year. And when I come back, we'll be free of this. All of us. We'll have a fresh start." Her father held her like she was still a little girl, like he could protect her from the world. But they both knew he couldn't protect her from this. No one could. The flight to Seoul was scheduled for early morning. Amara didn't sleep the night before. She finished packing her single suitcase, carefully folding the few clothes she was bringing, the photographs of her family she couldn't leave without, the small Bible her grandmother had given her. Everything else, she was told, would be provided. She stood in her childhood bedroom, looking at the posters on the walls, the books on the shelves, the little desk where she'd studied for countless exams. This had been her whole world for 24 years. And now she was leaving it behind. Her parents drove her to the airport at dawn. Lagos Murtala Muhammad International Airport was crowded and chaotic, as always, full of travelers and families saying goodbye. Her mother cried the entire way. Her father kept checking the rearview mirror like someone might be following them. Chidi had wanted to come, but they'd said no. Goodbyes at the house were easier, they'd told him. Amara was grateful. She didn't think she could handle watching her little brother cry again. At the airport, her mother hugged her so tight she could barely breathe. "You call us every week," her mother said. "Every single week. And if anything goes wrong, if you need us, you come home immediately. Do you understand me? Money isn't worth your life or your happiness." "I understand," Amara said, though they both knew she couldn't just come home. Not without condemning her family to financial ruin. Her father hugged her next, his eyes red. "Be strong, my daughter," he whispered. "Be smart. Be careful. And know that we love you. Always." Amara walked through security in a daze. She went through the motions of checking in, boarding the plane, finding her seat. She'd never been on a plane before, and, under different circumstances, she might have been excited. The seat was in business class, another sign of the park's wealth. It was spacious and comfortable with a screen and controls she didn't understand. A flight attendant explained how everything worked, offered her champagne, asked if she needed anything. Amara just nodded mutely and stared out the window. The plane took off and Lagos disappeared below her. The city where she'd been born, where she'd grown up, where all her dreams had been. It got smaller and smaller until it was just a sprawl of buildings and roads, and then clouds obscured everything. Amara pressed her hand against the window and let herself cry. 14 hours to Seoul. 14 hours to say goodbye to her old life and prepare for the new one. 14 hours until she met the stranger she'd married. She tried to sleep but couldn't. Her mind was racing too fast, filled with questions and fears. What if Min-jun was cruel? What if he was violent? What if she'd made a terrible mistake? The contract had protections written into it, clauses about her safety and well-being, but words on paper didn't mean much if you were trapped in a foreign country with no friends, no family, no support. What if something went wrong? What if she needed to escape? She didn't speak Korean, didn't know anyone in Seoul, didn't have money of her own. She would be completely dependent on Min-jun and his family, completely at their mercy. Stop it, she told herself firmly. Panicking won't help. You've made your choice. Now you have to see it through. She tried to distract herself by watching movies on the seat screen, but she couldn't focus. She tried reading the book she'd brought, but the words swam on the page. Eventually she just sat there, hands folded in her lap, breathing slowly, trying to keep calm. Somewhere over the Middle East, an elderly Korean woman in the seat next to her struck up a conversation. She spoke English with a heavy accent, but smiled warmly. First time to Seoul, she asked. Amara nodded. Yes, she said. First time. The woman's smile widened. You'll love it. Seoul is beautiful. So much to see and do. Are you going for business or pleasure? Amara hesitated. Family, she said finally. I'm going to meet my husband. Oh, how wonderful, the woman exclaimed. Long-distance relationship, yes. I understand. My daughter lives in America, married an American man. I go visit every year. Love knows no borders. She patted Amara's hand kindly. You'll be very happy. Amara managed a smile. Thank you. I hope so. The woman chatted for a while longer about Seoul, recommending places to visit and foods to try. She was kind, and Amara appreciated the distraction. But eventually the woman fell asleep, and Amara was alone with her thoughts again. Hours passed. The flight attendants served meals Amara barely touched. Outside the window, the sky changed from black to deep blue to pale gold as they chased the sunrise. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, the captain announced they were beginning their descent into Incheon International Airport. Amara's heart started pounding. This was it. No turning back now. She pressed her face to the window and watched Seoul appear below her. The city was massive, sprawling in every direction, a sea of buildings and roads and bridges. As they got lower, she could see the Han River cutting through the city, the skyscrapers of Gangnam and other districts reaching toward the sky, the mountains in the distance. It was beautiful, intimidating, completely foreign. The plane touched down with a bump, and Amara gripped the armrests until her knuckles turned white. They taxied to the gate. The seatbelt sign turned off. Everyone around her started gathering their belongings, chatting excitedly in Korean and other languages. Amara sat frozen for a moment, her breath coming short. Then she forced herself to move. She grabbed her carry-on bag, stood on shaking legs, and followed the crowd off the plane. Incheon International Airport was enormous and ultra-modern, all glass and steel and bright lights. Everything was labeled in Korean, English, and Chinese. Amara followed the signs to immigration, joined the long line of foreign visitors. When it was her turn, she handed over her passport and visa documents. The immigration officer, a young Korean woman, looked at her passport, then at her, then typed something into her computer. Marriage visa, the officer said in accented English. Yes, Amara replied. The officer stamped her passport and handed it back with a small smile. Welcome to Korea. Amara collected her suitcase from baggage claim and made her way toward the arrivals area. Her legs felt like jelly. Her heart was in her throat. And then she stepped through the doors and saw him. The driver. A middle-aged Korean man in a black suit holding a sign with her name. Amara Okafor. He wasn't smiling, but he nodded when he saw her. She walked over on autopilot. Miss Okafor, he said with a slight bow. I am Mr. Kim. I will take you to Mr. Park. He reached for her suitcase, and she let him take it. She followed him through the airport, through the parking garage, to a sleek black Mercedes. He opened the back door for her, and she climbed in, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than everything her family owned. They drove through Seoul, and Amara stared out the window trying to take it all in. The highways were wide and smooth, perfectly maintained. The buildings were tall and modern, covered in neon signs advertising products in Korean. There were people everywhere despite it being mid-morning on a weekday, all walking with purpose, dressed fashionably. Everything looked expensive, polished, organized. So different from Lagos's vibrant chaos. This was a different kind of energy. Faster. Colder. More efficient. They entered a district Mr. Kim didn't identify, driving through streets lined with high-end boutiques and luxury car dealerships. Then they turned down a quieter street and pulled up in front of a massive glass building, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces. Mr. Kim parked, retrieved her suitcase, and led her inside. The lobby was stunning. Marble floors. Gold accents. Modern art on the walls. A security desk where 2 guards nodded at Mr. Kim. They went to a private elevator, and Mr. Kim used a key card to activate it. They rode up in silence. Amara watched the numbers climb. 30, 35, 40. The elevator rose so smoothly she barely felt the movement. And then, at the 40th floor, the elevator doors opened directly into an apartment. No hallway. No door. Just straight into the most beautiful living space Amara had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, offering a panoramic view that took her breath away. The floors were white marble, so polished they reflected the light. The furniture was minimalist and modern, all clean lines and expensive fabrics in shades of white, black, and gray. Abstract art hung on the walls. Everything was perfect. Pristine. Like a photograph from a luxury magazine. It didn't look like anyone actually lived here. It looked like a museum. And standing in the center of the room, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city, was Min-jun Park. He turned when he heard the elevator, and Amara's breath caught in her throat. The photograph hadn't done him justice. Not even close. He was tall, probably 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean, athletic build. His face was striking, all sharp angles and strong features. High cheekbones. A square jaw. Straight nose. And those eyes. Dark, intense, unreadable. They looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Not welcome. Not hostility. Just cold assessment. He was wearing a black suit that fit him perfectly, probably custom-tailored and worth more than her family's annual income. His hair was styled immaculately. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. And danger. There was something in the way he held himself, the way he moved, that made Amara think of predators. Beautiful, captivating predators. You're late, he said in English. His voice was low and smooth with barely a trace of an accent. It wasn't angry exactly. Just flat. Emotionless. Like he was commenting on the weather. The flight was delayed. Amara started to explain, her voice shaking. I couldn't. I don't care, Min-jun cut her off. He walked past her toward the window, not even looking at her anymore. Mr. Kim, thank you. You're dismissed. Mr. Kim bowed and stepped back into the elevator. The doors closed, and suddenly Amara was alone with her husband. Your room is down the hall, Min-jun said, still not looking at her. Second door on the left. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you. Everything you need. We have a dinner tomorrow night with my family. Important dinner. You will smile, you will be polite, you will not say anything inappropriate, and you will not embarrass me. Understood. Amara's joy tightened. She'd just flown 14 hours, left her entire life behind, and this was how he greeted her. Like she was an inconvenience. Like she was hired help. Understood, she said, her voice sharper than she intended. Min-jun glanced back at her then, and for just a second, something flickered in those dark eyes. Surprise maybe. Or respect. She couldn't tell. The expression was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Welcome to Seoul, Amara," he said quietly, and his tone was almost gentle. "Try not to hate me too much." Then he turned back to the window, effectively dismissing her. Amara stood there for a moment, anger and hurt and exhaustion warring inside her. Then she grabbed the handle of her suitcase and walked down the hall, counting doors. Second on the left. She opened it and stepped into what was apparently her room. It was beautiful, of course. A king-sized bed with white silk sheets. More floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city. A private bathroom that was bigger than her entire bedroom back home, all marble and gold fixtures. A walk-in closet filled with clothes, just like Min-jun had said. She opened it and found dozens of outfits, all in her size, all designer labels. Dresses, pants, tops, shoes, bags. Everything perfectly organized. She closed the closet door and sat on the edge of the bed. And finally, alone in this beautiful, sterile room in a foreign city halfway around the world from everyone she loved, Amara let herself cry. She cried for her family, for her dreams of finishing nursing school, for the life she'd left behind, for the terrifying uncertainty of the life ahead. She cried until she had no tears left, until her eyes were swollen and her throat was raw. Then she lay down on the silk sheets, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. "Welcome to Seoul," she thought bitterly. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Park." And she closed her eyes, praying that sleep would come and give her a few hours of escape from this nightmare. It didn't. She must have dozed eventually because she woke to a knock on her door. Disoriented, she sat up. The sun was lower in the sky. Hours had passed. "Yes," she called out, her voice hoarse. The door opened, and a Korean woman in her 50s entered. She was wearing a crisp business suit and carrying a tablet. She bowed slightly. "Miss Okafor," she said in perfect English. "I am Mrs. Choi, Mr. Park's assistant. I'm here to help you prepare for tomorrow's dinner. May I come in?" "Of course," Amara said, standing quickly and trying to smooth her rumpled clothes. Mrs. Choi entered and sat in the chair by the window, gesturing for Amara to sit on the bed. She pulled up something on her tablet. "Tomorrow evening, you will have dinner with Chairman Park and his wife. This is Mr. Park's parents. Very important people. They will be evaluating you, assessing whether you are suitable for their son. You must make a good impression." "What do I need to do?" Amara asked. Mrs. Choi spent the next hour coaching her. How to greet elders in Korean culture. How to bow. What not to say. What topics were safe. How to eat certain foods. It was overwhelming, a crash course in Korean etiquette. Amara tried to absorb everything, taking mental notes. Mrs. Choi was patient but firm. "This is very important," she kept saying. "Chairman Park is not a man who tolerates disrespect or failure." Finally, Mrs. Choi stood. "I've arranged for a stylist to come tomorrow afternoon to do your hair and makeup. Wear the black dress in your closet, the one on the far right. Shoes to match are below it. Arrive in the living room at 6 p.m. Mr. Park will drive you to his parents' estate. Do you have any questions?" A million, Amara thought. But she shook her head. "No, thank you, Mrs. Choi." The woman nodded and left. Amara was alone again. She looked around the beautiful room and felt like a prisoner in a gilded cage. She wanted to call her family, hear their voices, but she didn't even know what time it was in Lagos. She didn't know if her phone would work here. She felt completely disconnected from everything she knew. Eventually, hunger drove her out of her room. She crept down the hall like an intruder in her own home, looking for the kitchen. The penthouse was huge, much bigger than it had seemed at first. Multiple bedrooms, a dining room, a study, and finally a massive kitchen with stainless steel appliances and marble countertops. The refrigerator was fully stocked. Amara made herself a simple sandwich, not trusting herself to cook in this intimidating space. She ate standing at the counter, looking out at Seoul through the windows. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The city lights were starting to come on, thousands and thousands of them, turning Seoul into a glittering sea. It was beautiful. Under different circumstances, she might have been odd. But right now, all she felt was lonely. She heard footsteps and turned to see Min-jun entering the kitchen. He'd changed into casual clothes, jeans, and a simple black t-shirt, but he still looked expensively put together. He went to the refrigerator without acknowledging her, pulled out a beer, and leaned against the counter on the opposite side of the kitchen. They stood there in uncomfortable silence for a long moment. Finally, Amara couldn't take it anymore. "Are you going to tell me anything about tomorrow?" she asked. "About what I'm walking into." Min-jun took a long drink of his beer. "Mrs. Choi briefed you." "Yes, but she works for you. I want to hear it from you. What should I expect?" Min-jun studied her for a moment. "My father is intimidating," he said finally. "He'll ask you questions. Pointed questions designed to make you uncomfortable. He'll want to see if you break easily. Don't. My mother will be polite but cold. She wanted me to marry a Korean woman from a respectable family. She's not happy about this arrangement. And my sister will probably be hostile. She thinks you're beneath us." "Good to know," Amara said bitterly. "Anything else?" Min-jun's expression didn't change. "Yes. Don't mention the contract. Don't mention your father's debt. As far as my family knows, we met, fell in love, and married quickly. That's the story. Stick to it." Amara stared at him. "So I'm supposed to lie? To your parents? To everyone?" Min-jun set down his beer and looked at her directly for the first time. "Yes," he said simply. "That's exactly what you're supposed to do. This is a business arrangement, Amara. Not a fairy tale. The sooner you accept that, the easier this year will be." His words stung more than they should have. Amara set down her half-eaten sandwich. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll play your game. I'll smile and lie and pretend to be the perfect wife. But don't expect me to thank you for it." Min-jun's jaw tightened. "I don't expect anything from you," he said coldly. "Except that you honor the contract. 1 year. That's all. Then you're free." He left the kitchen without another word. Amara stood there shaking with anger and hurt and frustration. This was going to be the longest year of her life. She cleaned up her dishes, went back to her room, and called her mother using the international plan Mrs. Choi had set up on her phone. Her mother answered on the first ring, and just hearing her voice made Amara's eyes fill with tears. "Mama," she said. "I'm here. I'm in Seoul. Tell me everything," her mother said. "Are you safe? Are you okay? Is he treating you well?" Amara hesitated. "I'm safe," she said, which was true. "The penthouse is beautiful. Seoul is amazing. And Min-jun is," she paused, trying to find the right words. "He's very focused on business. We're still getting to know each other." She didn't mention how cold he was, how unwelcome she felt. Her mother had enough to worry about. They talked for 30 minutes, Amara describing the flight and the city and the penthouse in careful, edited terms. Her mother shared news from home. Chitty had an exam coming up. Her father's business was already recovering now that the debt was cleared. Everyone missed her. When they hung up, Amara felt both better and worse. Better because she'd heard her family's voices. Worse because she was reminded of how far away they were. She got ready for bed, showering in the luxurious bathroom, changing into pajamas she found in the dresser. Then she lay in the enormous bed, dwarfed by its size, and stared out at the city lights. Tomorrow, she would meet Min-jun's family. Tomorrow, she would have to smile and lie and convince them she was good enough for their son. Tomorrow, her new life would truly begin. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. "You can do this," she told herself. 1 year. Just survive 1 year. And then you can go home. But deep down, she was starting to wonder if after a year in this strange, beautiful, lonely place, she'd even recognize home anymore. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. The stylist arrived in the afternoon as promised, a cheerful Korean woman who spoke minimal English, but was clearly a master of her craft. She washed and styled Amara's hair, pinning it up in an elegant twist. She did Amara's makeup, emphasizing her eyes and lips with subtle, expensive products. When she was done, Amara barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked sophisticated, polished, like she belonged in this world of wealth and power, even if she didn't feel like it. She put on the black dress Mrs. Choi had specified. It was beautiful, probably designer, form-fitting but elegant, falling to just below her knees. The shoes were Louboutins, red-soled heels that Amara had only ever seen in magazines. She stood in front of the mirror and took a deep breath. You can do this. Just a few hours. Smile. Be polite. Don't embarrass him. How hard can it be? At exactly 6 p.m., she emerged from her room. Min-jun was waiting in the living room, wearing another perfectly tailored suit. He looked up when he heard her heels clicking on the marble floor, and something flashed across his face. Surprise. Appreciation. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual mask of cold indifference. You look appropriate, he said. Let's go. They rode down in the elevator in silence. A driver was waiting with the Mercedes. Min-jun opened the door for her, which surprised Amara, and she slid into the back seat. He sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. As they drove through Seoul, Amara tried not to fidget nervously with her clutch purse. Where do your parents live? She asked, just to break the silence. Outside the city, Min-jun replied without looking at her. The estate has been in our family for 3 generations. The drive took almost an hour, leaving the glittering skyscrapers behind and heading into the hills outside Seoul. The landscape changed, becoming more traditional, more lush. They turned onto a private road that wound through manicured gardens and finally stopped in front of massive wooden gates. The driver spoke into an intercom, the gates swung open, and they drove through. Amara's breath caught. The Park family estate was stunning. A traditional Korean mansion, all curved roofs and wooden beams and stone paths, surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens. Lanterns lit the pathways as twilight fell. It looked like something from a historical drama, but clearly it was very much lived in and very much the home of one of Korea's most powerful families. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. Min-jun got out and extended his hand to help Amara. She took it, grateful for the support in her ridiculously high heels. Remember, he said quietly as they walked toward the door. We met, we fell in love, we married. That's the story. Nothing else. Amara nodded, her heart hammering in her chest. The door opened, and they were greeted by a servant who bowed deeply. He led them through the house, which was just as impressive inside as outside. Traditional Korean furniture mixed with modern touches. Priceless art on the walls. Everything was expensive, tasteful, perfect. Just like the penthouse. Just like everything in Min-jun's world. They were led to a formal dining room where 3 people were waiting. Chairman Park sat at the head of a long wooden table. He was exactly as imposing as Amara had feared. Mid-60s, silver hair, sharp eyes that seemed to see right through her. He was wearing a traditional Korean hanbok in dark colors, which somehow made him look even more intimidating. Beside him sat his wife, a woman who must have been beautiful in her youth and was still striking now. She wore a hanbok as well, elegant and expensive. Her expression was polite but cold. And across from them sat a young woman about Amara's age. Min-jun's sister, Jiwoo. She was beautiful, with delicate features and long black hair. She was wearing a modern dress and looking at Amara with open disdain. Father, mother, Jiwoo, Min-jun said, bowing slightly. May I present my wife, Amara? Amara bowed as Mrs. Choi had taught her, deeper than Min-jun's bow to show respect for elders. Thank you for welcoming me into your home, she said in careful English, hoping someone would translate if needed. Chairman Park stood slowly and walked toward her. He was tall, almost as tall as Min-jun, and his presence filled the room. So, he said in perfect English, you are the Nigerian girl my son has chosen. Yes, sir, Amara said, keeping her voice steady even though her knees were shaking. I'm honored to meet you. Honored, Chairman Park repeated, his tone unreadable. He circled her slowly, like a shark. My son tells me you met in Lagos. He was there on business, and you, what, captivated him. Amara glanced at Min-jun, who gave the tiniest nod. Yes, sir, she said. We met at a hospital. I was doing a clinical rotation, and he was visiting. We started talking, and she forced herself to smile. We connected. Connected, Chairman Park said. His eyes narrowed. You must be quite remarkable, Miss Okafor, to convince my son to marry so quickly. Min-jun has always been particular about his choices. Very selective. Very cautious. And yet he brought you here with barely any warning and married you in secret. Why? The question was a trap. Amara could feel it. She chose her words carefully. I think when you meet the right person, timing doesn't matter, she said. We knew quickly that we wanted to be together. And with the distance between Nigeria and Korea, we didn't want to wait. Chairman Park studied her for another long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, but it wasn't hostile either. Interesting, he said. Very interesting. He returned to his seat. Sit. Let's eat. The servants began bringing food. Course after course of traditional Korean dishes. Kimchi, bulgogi, japchae, and things Amara couldn't identify. She was grateful for Mrs. Choi's coaching on how to use chopsticks and which dishes to try first. She ate carefully, aware that every move was being watched. Min-jun's mother spoke for the first time. So, Amara, she said, her tone polite but icy. Tell us about your family. What does your father do? He runs an import business in Lagos, Amara said. We're a middle-class family. My mother has a shop in the market. I have a younger brother who's still in secondary school. And you, the woman continued. Min-jun said you're a student. Yes, ma'am, Amara said. I was in my final year of nursing school. Jiwoo interjected from across the table. You mean you haven't finished? Amara kept her expression neutral. I plan to continue my education here in Seoul, she said. Nursing is my passion. I want to help people. Jiwoo laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. How noble. And what does your family think of you marrying a Korean man and moving halfway across the world? They're supportive, Amara said evenly. They want me to be happy. Really, Jiwoo said, leaning forward. Because if I were your parents, I'd wonder what my daughter was really after. Must be quite a change from Lagos to a penthouse in Gangnam. Jiwoo, Min-jun said, his voice sharp. That's enough. What? Jiwoo said innocently. I'm just curious. We all are. It's so sudden. So unexpected. You can't blame us for having questions. Chairman Park held up a hand for silence. Enough, he said, and everyone immediately quieted. His authority was absolute. He looked at Amara. You're right to wonder about my daughter's intentions, he said. Any father would. But I'll give her a chance to prove herself. Time will tell if this marriage is genuine or a mistake. The rest of the dinner was tense. Jiwoo asked more pointed questions about Amara's education, her family's finances, her plans. Min-jun's mother remained cold, offering only minimal conversation. Chairman Park watched everything with those sharp eyes, saying little but missing nothing. Amara answered every question as carefully and honestly as she could while maintaining the fiction of a love story. Finally, as dessert was being served, something strange happened. Chairman Park leaned back in his chair and studied Amara with what might have been respect. You have fire in you, he said quietly. I can see it. You don't break easily. My son has made an interesting choice. He raised his glass of wine. Welcome to the family, Amara Okafor. Let's hope you survive it. Everyone raised their glasses. Amara did too, trying to smile, but the words sent ice through her veins. Survive it. What did that mean? The drive back to the penthouse was silent. Min-jun stared out the window, his expression unreadable. When they finally got home, and the elevator doors closed behind them, Amara kicked off her heels and turned to him. What did your father mean? She demanded. Survive it. Is someone trying to hurt me? Should I be worried? Min-jun loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. My father has a flair for the dramatic, he said. Don't read too much into it. That's not an answer, Amara said. Min-jun took a long drink. You did well tonight, he said, ignoring her question. Better than I expected. My father was impressed. That's not easy to achieve. I don't care if I impressed him, Amara said, her voice rising. I want to know if I'm in danger. Min-jun finally looked at her, really looked at her. Not from my family, he said. As long as you play your role, you're safe. Now get some rest. Tomorrow I'll show you around the city. Help you get oriented. He walked away, leaving Amara standing in the living room, anger and fear and exhaustion overwhelming her. She went to her room, peeled off the expensive dress, and collapsed onto the bed. Only one day in Seoul, and she already felt like she was drowning. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. What had she gotten herself into? And how was she going to survive an entire year of this? The next morning, true to his word, Min-jun took her out to explore the city. He was dressed casually again, though his casual clothes probably cost more than most people's formal wear. He barely spoke as they took the elevator down to the parking garage where a different car was waiting, a sleek black sports car that Amara didn't recognize the brand of but knew was expensive. "Are you going to tell me where we're going?" she asked as she buckled her seatbelt. He glanced at her briefly. "I'm going to show you the neighborhood. Where to shop. Where to eat. How to use the subway. You need to be able to navigate the city on your own." They drove through Gangnam first, and Min-jun pointed out landmarks in a flat, tour guide voice. "That's the COX Mall, one of the largest underground shopping centers in Asia. That's the Bonjunsa Temple if you're interested in Korean Buddhism. That's Olympic Park." Amara looked out the window, trying to memorize everything, but it was overwhelming. The streets were packed with people, the signs were all in Korean, and despite Min-jun's explanations, she felt completely lost. They parked and walked through a busy shopping district. People glanced at them, at Amara specifically, probably not used to seeing a black woman in this neighborhood. Some stares were curious, some were unfriendly, and Amara felt self-conscious. Min-jun seemed oblivious, or maybe he just didn't care. He led her into a coffee shop and ordered something in Korean. 2 iced Americanos appeared minutes later. They sat by the window. "This is a good place to come if you need to get out of the penthouse," Min-jun said. "The staff here are discreet. They won't bother you." "Do people bother you often?" Amara asked. Min-jun's jaw tightened. "Sometimes. Being a park comes with attention. Not all of it wanted." Amara sipped her coffee. It was strong and bitter. "Why did you really marry me?" she asked suddenly. "And don't give me the line about needing someone from outside your world. There has to be more to it than that." Min-jun was silent for a long moment, staring out at the street. Then, quietly, he said, "Because I needed someone who had no agenda. Everyone in my world wants something. Power, money, connections. You just wanted to save your family. That made you safe." "Safe for you," Amara said. "What about safe for me?" Min-jun looked at her then, and for the first time she saw something genuine in his eyes. "Regret maybe. I told you I'd protect you," he said. "I meant it. As long as you're my wife, no one will hurt you. I promise you that." It wasn't much, but it was something. Amara nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Okay." They spent the rest of the day walking through Seoul. Min-jun showed her how to use the subway system, how to buy tokens, how to read the maps even though they were in Korean. He took her to Myeongdong, a shopping district filled with cosmetic stores and street food vendors. He bought her tteokbokki from a street cart, spicy rice cakes that made her eyes water. When she coughed, he almost smiled. "It's an acquired taste," he said. "You'll get used to it." They went to Bukshin Hanok Village, a neighborhood of traditional Korean houses preserved in the middle of the modern city. It was beautiful, peaceful, and for a few minutes Amara could almost forget the strangeness of her situation and just appreciate where she was. As the sun started to set, they returned to the penthouse. "Thank you," Amara said in the elevator. "For today. For showing me around." Min-jun nodded. "Tomorrow I have to go back to work," he said. "But Mrs. Choi will check on you. And you have my number if you need anything." "Will I see you?" Amara asked. "At all?" "During the day." Min-jun hesitated. "I work long hours," he said. "But I'll try to be home for dinner when I can." The elevator opened, and he walked into the penthouse ahead of her. That night, they ate takeout in uncomfortable silence, and then Min-jun disappeared into his office. Amara went to her room and called her mother again, putting on a cheerful voice and lying about how wonderful everything was. The next few weeks settled into a strange routine. Min-jun left early every morning, usually before Amara woke up. She spent her days exploring Seoul, slowly gaining confidence navigating the subway and the streets. She found a library with English books and spent hours there. She discovered cafes where she could sit and watch people. She walked through parks and markets, slowly falling in love with the city despite herself. Mrs. Choi checked on her regularly, always professional but not unkind. She helped Amara with practical things like setting up a Korean bank account and getting a local phone plan. But Amara was lonely. Desperately lonely. She had no friends here. No one to talk to except her family on the phone once a week and Mrs. Choi on her brief visits. Min-jun came home late most nights, usually after Amara had already eaten dinner alone. Sometimes she'd hear him moving around the penthouse, pouring a drink, standing by the windows. A few times she almost went out to talk to him, but she always stopped herself. He'd made it clear this was a business arrangement. She was here to fulfill a contract, not to be his companion. One night, about a month after she'd arrived, Amara couldn't sleep. It was 2 a.m, and she was restless, missing home, missing her family, missing having purpose. She got up and went to the kitchen to make tea, and found Min-jun there, sitting at the counter in the dark, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked exhausted, stressed, more human than she'd ever seen him. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't know you were here. I'll go." "No," he said quietly. "Stay. It's your home too." Amara made her tea and sat at the opposite end of the counter, maintaining distance. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Min-jun spoke. "Are you adjusting okay?" he asked. "To Seoul. To this life." Amara considered lying, then decided against it. "I'm lonely," she said honestly. "I don't know anyone here. I don't speak the language. I spend most of my days just wandering around trying to feel less isolated. But it's not working." Min-jun was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know this isn't what you wanted." "It's not what I wanted either," Amara said. "But here we are." "What did you want?" Min-jun asked, looking at her curiously. "Before all this, what were your dreams?" Amara smiled sadly. "I wanted to finish nursing school. Open a clinic in Lagos for people who couldn't afford healthcare. Make a difference, you know. Help people. It was simple. But it mattered to me." "That's not simple," Min-jun said. "That's noble. Most people in my world only think about accumulating more wealth and power. You wanted to give back. That's rare." Amara shrugged. "Lot of good it does me now. I'm thousands of miles away from all of that." Min-jun set down his glass. "You could still do it," he said. "What?" "Nursing. There are programs here. International programs taught in English. You could enroll. Keep studying." Amara stared at him. "Why would you help me do that?" Min-jun met her eyes. "Because keeping you locked in this penthouse like a prisoner isn't fair. And because maybe if you have something to work toward, something that's yours, this year will be less miserable for both of us." Amara felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Min-jun nodded and stood. "I'll have Mrs. Choi look into programs tomorrow." "Good night, Amara." "Good night." True to his word, Mrs. Choi contacted Amara 2 days later with information about an international nursing program at a university in Seoul. The classes were taught in English, and they'd accept her credits from Nigeria. She could start the next semester and finish her degree. Min-jun would pay for everything, tuition and books and supplies. Amara was overwhelmed. It was the first kind thing he'd done for her, the first sign that he saw her as more than just an obligation. She threw herself into the application process, and 3 weeks later, she was accepted. Starting school changed everything. Suddenly Amara had purpose again. She had classmates, mostly other international students from various countries. She had professors and assignments and exams. She was learning again, growing again, moving toward her dream again. The loneliness didn't disappear completely, but it eased. She came home energized instead of depressed. And slowly, very slowly, things between her and Min-jun started to shift. He started coming home earlier. Not every night, but more often. They'd eat dinner together, and he'd ask about her classes. She'd tell him about what she was learning, the patients she was observing during her clinical rotations. He seemed genuinely interested. Sometimes he'd share things about his day too, carefully edited stories about business deals and difficult clients. They started watching TV together in the evenings, Korean dramas that Amara found ridiculous but entertaining. Min-jun would translate parts she didn't understand and mock the melodramatic plot twists. 3 months into her time in Seoul, Amara realized something startling. She was starting to like Min-jun. Not as a husband, not romantically, but as a person. Beneath the cold exterior, he was intelligent, occasionally funny, and more thoughtful than she'd initially believed. He remembered that she didn't like spicy food and ordered accordingly. He noticed when she was stressed about exams and made sure she had quiet time to study. Small things. But they mattered. One evening, they were cooking together. Min-jun had suggested they make kimchi fried rice, and Amara had agreed to help despite having no idea what she was doing. Min-jun was patient, showing her how to cut the vegetables, how much kimchi to add, when to add the rice. They worked side by side, and it felt almost normal. Almost like they were actually married, not just playing roles. "Why aren't you like this with your family?" Amara asked suddenly. "Cold and distant. With me you're different sometimes." "Not always, but sometimes." Min-jun stopped stirring the rice. "With my family, I have to be who they expect," he said. "Strong. Ruthless. Unfeeling. It's the only way to survive in their world. But with you," he paused. "You don't expect anything from me. So I can just be myself. Whatever that is." Amara felt a pang of sympathy. "It must be exhausting," she said. "Always performing. Always wearing a mask." Min-jun nodded slowly. "It is. But it's the only life I've ever known." They ate their fried rice and the conversation moved to lighter topics. But Amara couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. Min-jun wasn't a villain. He was just a man trapped in circumstances he didn't choose, much like her. And that realization changed how she saw him. But happiness, as Amara was learning, was fragile in their world. 3.5 months into her time in Seoul, on a Saturday afternoon when Min-jun was at the office and Amara was studying at a cafe in Itaewon, everything changed. She was deep in her textbook, notes spread around her, when she felt someone watching her. She looked up to see a Korean man, probably in his 30s, standing a few feet away. He was staring at her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. "You're Amara Okafor," the man said in accented English. Min-jun Park's wife. Amara's blood ran cold. How did he know who she was? "Yes," she said carefully. "And you are?" The man smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Someone who wants to give you a message. Tell your husband that the Choi family sends their regards. And that they're watching." He turned and walked away before Amara could respond. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone and called Min-jun. He answered on the second ring. "What's wrong?" he said immediately. "A man just approached me," Amara said, her voice trembling. "He knew who I was. He said he was from the Choi family and that they're watching us." "Where are you?" Min-jun demanded. "Itaewon. The cafe on the corner by the subway. Stay there. Don't move. I'm sending security. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. 20 minutes felt like an eternity. Amara packed up her books with shaking hands and sat at her table, hyper-aware of everyone around her. Was someone else watching her? Was she in danger? Finally, 2 large Korean men in suits entered the cafe, looked around, and approached her. "Mississippi Park," one said with a slight bow. "We're here to take you home. Mr. Park is waiting." They escorted her to a car, and Amara had never been so grateful to see Min-jun's building. He was waiting in the penthouse, pacing, his phone pressed to his ear speaking rapid Korean. When he saw her, he ended the call immediately and crossed to her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes searching her face. "Did he touch you?" "No," Amara said. "He just gave me a message. About the Choi family watching us." Min-jun's jaw clenched. He pulled her into an unexpected embrace, and Amara felt his heart racing against her cheek. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have protected you better." "Who are the Choi's?" Amara asked, pulling back to look at him. "And why are they threatening me?" Min-jun ran a hand through his hair, a rare break in his composed demeanor. "They're a rival family. Another crime organization in Seoul. They've been trying to expand into our territory for years, and tensions have been high. By approaching you, they're sending a message that I'm vulnerable. That they can get to the people I care about." Amara's mind was reeling. Crime organization. Rival family. Territory. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. What exactly is your family's business, Min-jun? Min-jun closed his eyes. I think you need to sit down. What followed was the most surreal conversation of Amara's life. Min-jun sat her down on the couch and told her everything. How his family wasn't just wealthy business people. How they were part of the Korean Mafia, one of the most powerful organized crime syndicates in Asia. How his father ran operations involving everything from underground gambling to smuggling to money laundering. How Min-jun had been raised to take over the empire, groomed from childhood to be the next chairman. How he'd never wanted this life, but had never had a choice. You married me into the Mafia, Amara said faintly when he finished. You brought me into this world and didn't tell me. I thought if you didn't know, you'd be safer, Min-jun said. I thought I could keep you separate from that part of my life. But the choice approaching you means they know about our marriage. Which means you're a target now. And I'm so sorry. Amara stood up, anger replacing shock. You should have told me, she said. From the beginning. I had a right to know what I was walking into. You're right, Min-jun said quietly. You did. And I was wrong to keep it from you. But I'm telling you now. And I swear to you, Amara, I will keep you safe. I'll double your security. You'll never be alone in public again. And I'll make sure the choice know that touching you means war. That's supposed to make me feel better, Amara said bitterly. Knowing that I'm a pawn in some criminal power struggle. Min-jun looked devastated. I know you hate me right now, he said. But please believe me when I say I never wanted you to get hurt. You're not just a pawn to me. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. You're important to me. More than I expected you to be. Amara didn't know what to say to that. She went to her room and closed the door, her mind spinning. She'd married into the Mafia. She was a target for rival criminals. Her life was in danger. She should be terrified. She should call her family and tell them to get her out. But as she sat on her bed, replaying Min-jun's words, she realized something. He'd looked genuinely afraid for her. Genuinely sorry. And he'd said she was important to him. Which meant maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. For either of them. That night, neither of them slept. Amara could hear Min-jun making phone calls in Korean, his voice tense. Around 3 a.m., unable to stand it anymore, she went to find him. He was in his office, sitting at his desk with his head in his hands. I'm scared, Amara admitted from the doorway. Min-jun looked up, and the expression on his face broke her heart. Me too, he said. Come here. She crossed the room, and he pulled her down to sit beside him. I promise you, he said, taking her hands. I will not let anything happen to you. Even if it costs me everything, I will keep you safe. Why, Amara whispered. Why do you care so much? Because you're the only real thing in my life, Min-jun said. Everyone else wants something from me. But you just see me. And that matters more than I can say. From that night on, everything between them changed. Min-jun hired bodyguards who followed Amara everywhere. She hated it at first, feeling like she was under surveillance, but she understood why it was necessary. Min-jun started teaching her basic self-defense in the evenings, showing her how to break holds, where to strike if someone attacked her, how to run effectively. You're never going to be defenseless again, he told her. I won't allow it. They spent more time together. More meals. More conversations. He told her about his childhood, about growing up in a world where trust was currency and weakness meant death. She told him about her dreams for the future, about the clinic she still hoped to open someday. They learned each other's habits and preferences. How Min-jun took his coffee. How Amara hummed when she studied. Small intimacies that built into something neither of them had planned. For months into her time in Seoul, Amara had an exam she'd been stressed about for weeks. She studied late into the night, and when she finally emerged from her room at midnight to get water, she found Min-jun waiting with a cup of her favorite tea. Thought you might need this, he said. You remembered, Amara said, touched. Of course, Min-jun replied. I pay attention to you, Amara. More than you know. They sat on the balcony, looking out at the city lights, and talked until dawn. About everything and nothing. And somewhere in those hours, sitting close together under the Seoul sky, Amara realized she was falling for him. Actually falling for her husband who she'd married as a stranger. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely unexpected. A few days later, Min-jun had to attend a business gala. Important people would be there, he explained, including his father and other family heads. He asked if Amara would come with him. As your arm candy, she asked wryly. As my wife, he corrected. I want them to see that I'm not weak. That I have someone by my side. Amara agreed, and Mrs. Choi arranged for another stunning dress, a deep red gown that made Amara feel like royalty. When she emerged from her room the night of the gala, Min-jun stared at her with an expression she'd never seen before. You're beautiful, he said softly. Amara felt her cheeks warm. Thank you, she said. You look good too. He was wearing a tuxedo, and he looked devastatingly handsome. Dangerous and elegant all at once. The gala was at a luxury hotel in the heart of Seoul, and it was unlike anything Amara had ever experienced. Hundreds of people in expensive clothes, drinking expensive champagne, networking, and schmoozing. Min-jun introduced her to what felt like 1,000 people, and she smiled and made polite conversation and played the role of the perfect wife. She met other family heads, dangerous men with cold eyes who sized her up and found her acceptable. She met business partners and politicians and socialites. And she met the choice. Chairman Choi was in his 70s, a wizened man with sharp eyes and a calculating smile. So this is the African bride, he said in English, looking Amara up and down. Unusual choice, Min-jun. But I can see the appeal. Min-jun's arm tightened around Amara's waist. My wife is none of your concern, he said coolly. Chairman Choi laughed. Everything about you is my concern, boy. Don't forget that. He walked away, and Amara felt Min-jun trembling with suppressed anger. That's him, she asked quietly. The one who's threatening us. Min-jun nodded. He wants me to fail. To prove I'm not worthy of leading my family. And he'll use any means necessary to make that happen. The rest of the evening was tense. Amara could feel eyes on them, people watching, judging, speculating. But Min-jun never left her side, his presence protective and constant. When they finally left, it was past midnight. In the car, Amara said, I don't know how you live like this. All the time. The scrutiny. The danger. The games. You get used to it, Min-jun said. But then, quietly, he added. Or at least you pretend to. Amara reached over and took his hand. You don't have to pretend with me, she said. Min-jun looked at their joined hands, then at her face. I know, he said. That's why you're dangerous. Because you make me forget to wear the mask. And in my world, that's how you get hurt. But despite his words, the mask kept slipping. They grew closer. They laughed together over inside jokes. They cooked meals together. They watched the sun rise from the balcony after nights of talking. Min-jun started touching her more, casual touches that sent electricity through Amara's skin. A hand on her back. Fingers brushing hers. And Amara found herself leaning into him, craving the contact, wanting more. 5 months in, they were having dinner when Min-jun said something funny, and Amara laughed so hard she snorted. Min-jun grinned, a real genuine smile, and said, I love that sound. I love making you laugh. The word love hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Do you, Amara asked softly, love making me laugh? Or do you love me? Min-jun's smile faded, replaced by something intense and vulnerable. I think I'm falling in love with you, he said. And I know that wasn't part of the plan. I know this was supposed to be temporary. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being an obligation and started being the best part of my day. And I don't know what to do with that. Amara's heart was racing. I'm falling for you too, she admitted. And I'm terrified. Because in 7 months, I'm supposed to leave. And I don't know if I can anymore. Min-jun crossed to her side of the table and cupped her face in his hands. Then don't leave, he whispered. Stay. Not because of the contract. Not because of money. But because you want to. Because this, he gestured between them, this is real. And I don't want to lose it. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Amara didn't want to pull away. She wanted this. Wanted him. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle at first, tentative, testing. But then Amara's hands came up to tangle in his hair, and Min-jun's arms wrapped around her waist, and the kiss deepened, becoming hungry and desperate and full of months of suppressed longing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-jun rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me," he said again. Amara nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll stay." That night, for the first time, they fell asleep together. Not in separate rooms, but on the couch, tangled up in each other, and it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. The next morning, Amara woke up in Min-jun's arms and smiled. This was her life now. Not just fulfilling a contract, but building something real with someone who saw her, understood her, valued her. It wouldn't be easy. She was still part of a dangerous world, still navigating a culture she didn't fully understand, still far from her family. But she had Min-jun, and that was enough. Or so she thought. 3 days later, disaster struck. Amara was walking to class with her bodyguards following at a discreet distance when her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She opened it and her blood turned to ice. It was a photo of her family. Her mother, her father, standing outside their home in Lagos. The photo had been taken recently, maybe even that day. And below it, a single sentence in English. "Leave Min-jun or they die." Amara stopped walking so abruptly that one of her bodyguards almost ran into her. "Mississippi Park, are you all right?" he asked in Korean accented English. She couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Someone had found her family. Someone knew where they lived. And they were threatening to kill them if she didn't leave Min-jun. She turned and ran back toward the car, the bodyguards following in confusion. She had to get home. Had to tell Min-jun. Had to figure out what to do. She burst into the penthouse to find Min-jun in a meeting with several men in suits. He took one look at her face and immediately dismissed them. "What happened?" he demanded. Amara thrust her phone at him wordlessly. Min-jun read the message and his face went pale. "When did you get this?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. 5 minutes ago, Amara said. "Min-jun, they found my family. They're going to kill them." He pulled her into his arms. "No, they're not," he said firmly. "I'll send security to Lagos immediately. Your family will be protected. I promise you." "But who?" Amara asked. "Who would do this?" "The choice," Min-jun started to say, but then his phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, and then his expression changed to something Amara had never seen before. Betrayal. Pain. Rage. He hung up and looked at Amara with devastation in his eyes. "It's not the choice," he said quietly. "It's my sister. Ji-woo." "What?" Amara said. "Your sister. Why would she?" Min-jun sank onto the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. "Because she wants to lead the family," he said. "And she thinks I'm too weak. She's been working with the choice this whole time, feeding them information, helping them undermine me. And now she's threatening your family to force you to leave so that I'll look even weaker. So that our father will finally give up on me and name her as his heir." Amara felt sick. His own sister. She sat beside him. "What do we do?" she asked. Min-jun was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at her with determination. "We stop her," he said. "We get proof of what she's doing, and we take it to my father. He won't tolerate betrayal, even from his own daughter." "But how?" Amara asked. "How do we get proof?" Min-jun thought for a moment. "You," he said. "You contact her. Tell her you're leaving. Arrange to meet her. And you wear a wire. Get her to confess. It's the only way." "It's too dangerous," Amara protested. "If she suspects anything." "I'll have a team monitoring everything," Min-jun said. "At the first sign of trouble, they'll intervene." And Amara, his voice was intense. "I know I'm asking a lot. But if we don't stop her, she'll keep coming after us. After your family. This is our only chance." Amara swallowed hard. Then she nodded. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it. For us. For my family. Let's stop her." The next 2 days were spent planning every detail. Min-jun's tech team set up a sophisticated recording device disguised as a bracelet. They coached Amara on what to say, how to get Ji-woo to incriminate herself. Min-jun arranged for a security team to fly to Lagos to protect Amara's family. and Amara sent Jiwoo a message. "We need to talk. I've made a decision about my marriage." Jiwoo agreed to meet suspiciously quickly, probably because she thought she'd won. The meeting was set for a cafe in Gangnam. The morning of, Amara was terrified. She put on the bracelet with the hidden wire, checked the transmission one more time, and tried to steady her breathing. Min-jun pulled her aside. "You don't have to do this," he said for the 10th time. "We can find another way." "No," Amara said. "This is the only way. And I'm not going to let her destroy us. Not after everything we've been through." Min-jun cupped her face and kissed her deeply. "Be careful," he whispered. "I love you." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too," she said. And then she left, her bodyguards following at a distance, Min-jun and his team monitoring everything from a van nearby. The cafe was crowded, which Amara was grateful for. More witnesses. Jiwoo arrived exactly on time, looking pleased and smug. She sat across from Amara and ordered a latte. "So," she said in English, "you're finally seeing sense." Amara forced herself to look defeated. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "This life, this world. It's too much. I want to go home." "And what about my dear brother?" Jiwoo asked with mock concern. "He'll survive," Amara said. "He doesn't really need me." Jiwoo laughed. "You're right about that. Min-jun has always been weak. Too soft for this life. He never should have been father's choice." "You should have been the heir," Amara said, playing into Jiwoo's ego. "You're stronger, smarter, more ruthless." Jiwoo's smile widened. "Finally, someone who sees the truth," she said. "I've been managing this family's real business for years while everyone praised Min-jun for his supposed leadership. But father is too traditional. He thinks a son should inherit. So I had to take matters into my own hands. By working with the choice," Amara said carefully. Jiwoo paused, her eyes narrowing. "Who told you that?" "I figured it out," Amara said quickly. "The timing of their moves against Min-jun. The information they had. It had to be someone inside the family. And you're the only one who benefits from his failure." For a moment, Amara thought she'd pushed too hard. Jiwoo studied her with suspicion. But then her smile returned. "You're smarter than you look," she said. "Yes, I've been working with the choice. I've been feeding them intelligence for 6 months. Every business deal Min-jun makes, every alliance he tries to forge, I undermine it. And once father sees that Min-jun can't even keep his own wife loyal, can't protect his own family, he'll have no choice but to name me as his successor." "And my family?" Amara asked. "Was that threat really from you?" Jiwoo shrugged casually, like she was discussing the weather. "Insurance," she said. "To make sure you actually leave. And to send Min-jun a message that he can't protect anyone. He's weak, Amara. He always has been. And weak people don't survive in our world." "You're a monster," Amara whispered. Jiwoo leaned forward. "I'm a survivor," she said coldly. "And in this world, that's what matters. Now, are you going to leave like you promised, or do I need to make good on my threats?" "I'll leave," Amara said. "Just please don't hurt my family." Jiwoo sat back, satisfied. "Smart girl," she said. "You always were smarter than Min-jun gave you credit for." Amara left the cafe on shaking legs, but she'd done it. Every word had been recorded. Every confession had been captured. She walked to the van where Min-jun was waiting, and the moment she climbed inside, he pulled her into his arms. "You did it," he whispered. "You were incredible." "Now what?" Amara asked. "Now we take this to my father," Min-jun said grimly. "Tonight." That evening, they went to the Park family estate. Chairman Park had called a family dinner, not knowing what was coming. When everyone was seated, Min-jun stood. "Father," he said, "I have something you need to hear." And he played the recording. The dining room was silent as Jiwoo's voice filled the space, confessing to everything. Working with a choice. Undermining Min-jun. Threatening Amara's family. When it ended, everyone turned to look at Jiwoo. Her face had gone from pale to red with fury. "That was taken out of context," she said desperately. "Min-jun set me up. He manipulated." Chairman Park held up a hand, and Jiwoo fell silent immediately. His face was expressionless, which somehow made him more terrifying than if he'd been angry. "Jiwoo," he said quietly, Did you work with the Choi family? Yes or no? Jiwoo's mouth opened and closed. Then she seemed to make a decision. Defiance replaced fear. Yes, she said, her voice hard. I did. Because you were wrong to make Min-jun your heir. He's weak. He doesn't have what it takes to lead this family. I do. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm ruthless in ways he'll never be. And I don't apologize for doing what needed to be done. Chairman Park stood slowly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. You betrayed this family, he said, his voice like ice. You endangered everything we've built. You colluded with our enemies. You threatened an innocent woman's family. And you dare to stand there and justify it. Jiwoo lifted her chin defiantly. I did what you were too blind to do, she said. I tried to save this family from Min-jun's weakness. Chairman Park's expression didn't change. You're no longer part of this family, he said. You are no longer my daughter. You will be removed from all family businesses. Your inheritance is revoked. And you will leave this house tonight and never return. Guards. Take her. 2 guards stepped forward. Jiwoo's defiance crumbled. Father, no, she pleaded. Please. I was trying to help. I was trying to. I said take her, Chairman Park repeated. The guards took Jiwoo's arms. She struggled, screaming that it wasn't fair, that she deserved to lead, but they dragged her out. The doors closed behind her, and silence fell over the dining room. Chairman Park turned to Min-jun and Amara. You handled this well, he said. Both of you. Min-jun, you showed strength and strategy. And Amara, his expression softened slightly. You protected my son and this family at great personal risk. I underestimated you. I apologize. Thank you, sir, Amara managed to say. Chairman Park nodded. Welcome to the family, he said. For real this time. And with that, it was over. Jiwoo was gone. The threat was neutralized. And for the first time since Amara had arrived in Seoul, she felt like maybe, just maybe, they could actually have a future together. The drive back to the penthouse was quiet. Min-jun held Amara's hand the entire way, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. When they got home, he pulled her into his arms. I'm so sorry you had to go through that, he said. But thank you. For being brave. For protecting us. For staying. Amara rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I'd do it again, she said. Because I love you. And because this is my home now. Min-jun tilted her face up and kissed her softly. You're my home, he whispered. The only home I've ever really had. That night, they didn't sleep in separate rooms. They fell asleep tangled together in Min-jun's bed, and it felt like coming home in a way Amara had never expected. The next few months were different. Better. The choice, without Jiwoo's intelligence, backed off. Chairman Park publicly acknowledged Amara as part of the family, which gave her status and protection. Min-jun started making changes in the family business, slowly transitioning away from criminal activities and toward legitimate enterprises. It was slow work, and there was resistance, but he was determined. I want our children to inherit something we can be proud of, he told Amara. Not an empire built on blood and crime. Amara finished her nursing degree and graduated at the top of her class. Min-jun was in the audience, cheering louder than anyone. After the ceremony, he surprised her with a gift. He'd purchased a building in a low-income neighborhood in Seoul and set it up as a free clinic. For you, he said. To run however you want. To help people like you always dreamed. Amara cried and kissed him and felt more love than she'd thought possible. 6 months after the confrontation with Jiwoo, exactly 1 year after Amara had arrived in Seoul, they sat on their balcony watching the sunset. Your contract is up, Min-jun said quietly. 1 year. You fulfilled your obligation. Your family's debt was cleared months ago, and I had the $100,000 transferred to your account. You're free to go. Free to go back to Nigeria. Free to leave this life. No obligation. No strings. Just your choice. Amara looked at him. This man she'd married as a stranger. This man who'd protected her, challenged her, loved her. This man who'd changed his entire life's trajectory because of her. And if I want to stay, she asked softly. Min-jun's eyes filled with tears. Then stay, he whispered. Not because you have to. Not because of money or contracts, but because you love me, because you want to build a life with me, because this is home. Amara smiled. Then I'm staying, she said. Because I love you, because you're my home, because I can't imagine my life without you, and because I want to see where this goes. All of it. The clinic, the family, our future, together. Min-jun pulled her into his arms and kissed her like she was oxygen. I love you, he said against her lips. So much. I love you too, Amara replied. And they sat there as the Seoul sun set, knowing that their story was just beginning. 1 year later, they renewed their vows in a real wedding. Amara's family flew in from Lagos, and her mother cried through the entire ceremony. Min-jun's father gave a surprisingly emotional speech about love and strength in family. It was beautiful. Perfect. Everything Amara had never known she wanted. 2 years after that, they welcomed their first child, a daughter. They named her Chioma, which means good fortune in Igbo. Min-jun was an amazing father, gentle and patient and devoted. Amara watched him with their daughter and fell in love with him all over again. 3 years later, they had a son, Jude. Their family was complete. The clinic thrived. Min-jun successfully transitioned most of the family business to legitimate operations. Chairman Park retired and named Min-jun as his successor, proud of the man his son had become. And Amara, the Nigerian nursing student who'd agreed to a marriage contract to save her family, became one of the most respected members of Seoul's elite society. But more than that, she was happy. Truly, deeply happy. She had a career she loved, a family she adored, and a husband who saw her and valued her and loved her unconditionally. Was it perfect? No. There were still challenges, still cultural differences to navigate, still occasional threats from rivals. But they faced everything together. 10 years after Amara first arrived in Seoul, she stood on the balcony of their penthouse, watching the city lights just like she had that first terrifying night. But everything was different now. She wasn't alone. She wasn't scared. She was home. Min-jun came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. How far we've come, Amara said. How much has changed? Do you ever regret it? Min-jun asked. Agreeing to marry me. Coming here. Amara turned in his arms and looked up at him. Not for a second, she said. Every challenge, every fear, every moment of uncertainty led me here. Led me to you. To our family. To this life. And I wouldn't change any of it. Even that first terrible night when you told me I was late and barely looked at me, she teased. Min-jun laughed. I was an ass, he admitted. Terrified and trying to hide it by being cold. You were, Amara agreed. But you got better. He kissed her forehead. You made me better, he said. You made me want to be better. They stood there in comfortable silence, and Amara thought about how she'd come to Seoul expecting to fulfill a contract and leave. But instead, she'd found love. Purpose. Home. And that was the greatest fortune of all. So if you were Amara, would you have stayed? Or would you have taken the money and run? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you love this story, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with someone who loves a good romance, and subscribe for more epic stories like this one. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep believing in love against all odds.